The film begins with a doctor getting ready to do surgery at a clinic. But this time, the patient isn't a woman. It's a man named Porter who's badly hurt because he got shot twice. After some time, he gets better and decides to go back to his hometown to get revenge. 5 months ago, someone stole his money, and he almost died because a friend betrayed him. Porter is really smart when it comes to robbing, and he's learned how to survive on the streets using his skills. One morning, Porter steals a few dollars from a homeless man so he can buy breakfast. Later that day, in the middle of a busy street, he steals a rich man's wallet. Quickly, he takes the money and throws the wallet away. Porter knows how to trick the banking system too. He manages to take money from the rich man's bank account and uses his credit card to buy fancy clothes and watches. Later, he trades 3 expensive watches for weapons at a pawn shop. The scene continues with Porter stopping at a restaurant after a long day of shopping. But soon, the person Porter had stolen from realizes his wallet is gone and his credit card doesn't work anymore. That night, he waits outside a house. The person living there seems out of it because she's been using illegal drugs. Then, Porter takes advantage of this because she forgets to lock her door, so he can walk in easily. Porter looks like he's searching for someone in the house. Strangely, the woman who lives there, named Lynn, seems to recognize him and thought he was dead. Lynn had become addicted to drugs over the past few months, and there's a box of drugs right next to her bed. At that time, Porter tries to help Lynn by taking the drugs away and locking them in her room. But Lynn had hidden more drugs under her shoe. The next morning, Porter finds her dying from taking too many drugs. Shortly after, Porter lies down next to Lynn, remembering what happened 5 months ago. Lynn was his wife, and one night, while they were being close, Porter got a call from his partner, Val, about a new robbery target. The next day, they met on the side of the road, and Val told Porter that every Thursday and Friday, mafia leaders in Chinatown have their people deliver $500,000 somewhere. They always use the same route, so if they can pull off the robbery, Val plans to use his share to get into the drug dealing business. The scene moves to a week later, where Porter and Val are trying to stop the mafia's money delivery car in an alley. At that moment, Porter had noticed the people delivering the money never wore seatbelts. He planned to use this to their advantage during the heist. After a hard hit, all the targets were badly hurt. Porter quickly used a chain cutter to grab the suitcase full of money from their enemies' hands. Soon after, Lynn showed up with a car to help them escape. But then a problem came up. When they counted the money, it was much less than they thought cause it's only $130,000. Val was really upset because that meant he would only get $70,000, which wasn't enough to join the drug ring. Porter tried to calm him down, reminding him that they should be thankful the plan went smoothly. Noticing that Val was getting out of control, Porter quickly told Lynn to get ready to leave. But suddenly, Porter was betrayed by his own wife. It turns out, Lynn had been holding a grudge against him because he had been secretly cheating on her. That wasn't the only reason she betrayed him. Lynn had also started using drugs, and Val promised to give her drugs for free once he became a drug dealer. The scene shifts back to the present. That morning, a drug delivery person knocked on the door of Porter's apartment. Porter, still upset about Lynn's death from her addiction, took out his anger on the courier, blaming him for keeping Lynn hooked on drugs. He even threatened to kill the courier if he didn't tell him where Val was. Without wasting time, Porter headed to the headquarters of a drug boss named Arthur Stamen. When he arrived, one of Arthur's men tried to hide where Arthur was, making Porter angry. The man ended up getting seriously hurt and had to tell Arthur what happened. At that time, Arthur was busy gambling with 2 corrupt cops when Porter barged in. Porter was almost shot for interrupting, but he quickly threw some heroin that the courier had failed to deliver onto the table. Now the cops were suspicious of Arthur, thinking he was not doing his job as a drug dealer properly. And Arthur, noticing the cops' suspicion, took Porter outside to talk. He explained that he and Val were just business partners. Arthur receives a supply of drugs from Val once a month, which he then distributes. Arthur didn't know where Val lived, but he was sure Val was still in the city because he had now become involved with the most powerful drug lords in New York City. Realizing that there was no point in killing Arthur, Porter asked him to deliver a message of revenge to Val. Now, Val was currently staying at a hotel heavily guarded by the mafia. That afternoon, his girlfriend, Pearl, visited his room to chat. They both had a strange interest in fistfighting. The next day, Val didn't mention Porter's name when talking about someone looking for him. But when Porter's name came up, Val panicked. He thought Porter had died 5 months ago. Val knew Porter wasn't just any robber, and even though he was now under the protection of the most powerful mafia in the city, that didn't mean Porter couldn't kill him. While waiting for news from Arthur, Porter decided to look for his old lover, Rosie. Rosie was a high-class prostitute, but no one had seen her for the last few months. However, Porter eventually found her through a hotel worker who usually helped guests hire her services. Rosie was very happy to see Porter because they had loved each other in the past, but their relationship had been complicated. Rosie thought Porter was dead and even named her guard dog after him. Porter visited Rosie to find out where Val was. Rosie definitely knew because she often served high-ranking mafia members in the city. Rosie became emotional when she heard Val's name because she had been hurt by him before. Val was known for beating up women like her. After Porter promised to kill Val, Rosie gave him the address where Val was staying. The scene changes to show Porter sneaking into Val's room. The mobsters guarding the building were no match for Porter, but he didn't kill Val right away. Instead, he asked Val where the money was. Val told him that all the money had been given to the mafia boss and the most powerful drug dealer in New York City, a man named Carter. Porter was given until the next day to pay off his debt, or his life would be in danger. The next day, Val went to Carter to ask for help in dealing with Porter. But instead of helping, Carter questioned Val's abilities and told him to prove himself if he wanted to stay in the gang. Carter was curious about who Porter was, since Val seemed so scared of him. Secretly, Carter sent his men to kill Porter if they got the chance. Meanwhile, Val, who couldn't get help from Carter, asked Pearl, who was a member of the Triad, for help. Later that afternoon, Porter went to the meeting location, but on the way, he was suddenly attacked by Triad members who had set a trap for him. At that time, he was outnumbered and couldn't do much. But suddenly, 2 corrupt cops appeared and scared off the Triad members. It turns out these 2 corrupt cops had been following Porter since the day before. They had learned about his past and his desire to get back $7,000. The cops offered to help Porter as long as he transferred the money to them. But if Porter refused, they threatened to arrest him for allegedly killing his ex-wife, who had been found dead in her apartment the day before. Soon after, Porter returned to Rosie's apartment to treat his wounds, but he didn't know that Val had been following him. While Rosie was helping Porter with his injuries, they talked about why they had separated. Even though they had been close, Rosie was still working with other clients, which made Porter feel like he couldn't continue their relationship. Rosie tried to convince Porter to come back to her, but he refused because he was focused on getting his revenge. After Porter left, Val showed up at Rosie's door, threatening her. And Rosie, though she didn't fight back, pretended that Porter was lying under a blanket, but it was actually her guard dog. Even with the dog's help, Rosie couldn't defeat Val and ended up getting beaten again, just like before. Fortunately, Porter arrived just in time to save her. Since Val didn't have the money Porter wanted, Porter forced him to steal it from his boss. Porter then demanded that Val tell him where Carter's base was. Val thought Porter was crazy for risking his life over $7,000, especially against the most dangerous mafia in the city. Porter realized that his former partner wasn't afraid to fight back. Because a murder had taken place in Rosie's apartment, they couldn't stay there anymore. Porter invited Rosie to move to his secret apartment. But when they got there, the phone rang, which was strange because no one knew the number. When they checked, they found a bomb under the bed connected to the phone line as a trigger. After looking out the window, Porter realized that the bomb was set up by one of Carter's men. Meanwhile, Carter's men were confused about why Porter hadn't answered the phone yet. Not wasting any time, Porter quickly planned a counterattack by cutting the fuel line on their car. When they tried to call Porter's apartment again, Porter was ready to take his revenge. With Carter's henchmen out of the way, Porter decided to sneak into Carter's base to confront him directly. Before going inside, Porter planned to hide his gun in a newspaper box. Suddenly, the 2 corrupt cops appeared, and this time, they brought Arthur with them. They were getting impatient because they hadn't received the money Porter promised. Porter told them to be patient and decided to leave his gun with the cops. When Porter entered Carter's headquarters, he quickly explained that he was the one who had taken down Carter's men earlier because he was tough enough to do it. They let him in, but as soon as he was inside, Porter launched an attack, knocking out Carter's two guards and taking their weapons. Porter demanded to get his $7,000 back, but Carter refused, explaining that he wasn't the real leader of the mafia. Carter revealed that he still had a boss named Bronson. Over the phone, Bronson had just bought his son a Ferrari for his birthday. While his son was away, Bronson spoke with Porter, who demanded his money back and threatened to kill Carter if the money wasn't paid right away. Everyone thought Porter was joking because no one usually dares to challenge the mafia over a small amount of money. But after Carter was killed, Bronson realized that Porter's threat was real. Bronson left the building to retrieve the weapon he had hidden with the police. Porter hadn't touched the weapon directly, so his fingerprints wouldn't be on it. Later, the weapon was found near Val's body, along with a police badge that had been stolen the day before. Porter then went to meet Rosie at a restaurant and told her that they wouldn't be able to live in peace unless they got rid of all their enemies. At that time, Porter couldn't do it alone, so Rosie needed to help him. That night, Rosie dressed up and got into a limousine, with Porter acting as the driver. They planned to kidnap the mafia boss's son. While on the phone, Porter overheard that Bronson's son, Johnny, was watching a boxing match. Porter paid the LED screen operator to display a birthday message, which helped him find Johnny. As Johnny was leaving the event, Rosie approached him, pretending to be a birthday gift from his father. And Johnny, charmed by Rosie, agreed to get into the car. On the way, Rosie convinced Johnny to put on handcuffs, and that's when Johnny realized he had been kidnapped. The next day, Fairfax, the mafia's treasurer, returned home after being away. As soon as he entered, he found one of his guards dead, killed by Porter, who was there to collect his money. Even though Fairfax had two bodyguards, he couldn't do anything because of Porter's presence. Fairfax then called Bronson to relay Porter's demands. Bronson agreed to give the money, but vowed to hunt Porter down no matter where he went. But there, Porter responded with a similar threat, warning that if Bronson tried anything, his son's life would be in danger. Fairfax was curious about Porter, wondering why someone would risk challenging a mafia boss over such a small amount of money. Meanwhile, the two corrupt cops were waiting outside Fairfax's house for Porter to come out. However, before they could do anything, members of the police's internal affairs division showed up and arrested them. The cops were linked to Val's murder because their fingerprints were found on the gun and badge at the crime scene. At the same time, Arthur and his men followed Porter in a taxi, seeking revenge. But Porter accidentally walked into their trap. At that time, Arthur wanted to capture Porter and bring him to Bronson, hoping to earn a place in the mafia family. Unfortunately for Arthur, Porter managed to seize his weapon, and things took a turn when they were suddenly attacked by the Triads. Porter successfully took down all the Triad members and Arthur. When it was all over, Porter was held at gunpoint by Pearl, but she had run out of bullets. Unfortunately, the trouble wasn't over. Fairfax's men showed up to take revenge and started torturing Porter to make him reveal where Bronson's son was. Even after being tortured, Porter refused to talk. Soon after, Bronson arrived with $130,000 in cash as ransom. But since Porter was captured, the information about Johnny's location would be exchanged for Porter's life. Bronson ordered his men to crush Porter's toes one by one. After having 3 of his toes crushed, Porter finally revealed that Johnny was being held in an apartment. Now, Rosie was in charge of watching Johnny, so Bronson headed to the apartment, taking Porter in the trunk to torture him more if the information was false. However, Porter had planned everything. When Bronson went up to the apartment, Porter managed to escape from the trunk. He called his apartment's phone number, intending to set off the bomb that Carter's men had placed under the mattress. Unexpectedly, Johnny was actually being held in a different apartment. When the bomb went off, Bronson and all his men died instantly. With that, Porter's revenge was complete. In the end, Porter picked up Rosie, and they planned to move to Canada. The $130,000 Bronson had brought was safely stored in the car, enough for them to start a new life in a new place. The film ends. The moral lesson from this film is if you're going to kidnap someone, make sure they don't have a bomb as a surprise party favor.